What's up, everybody? Probably nobody here yet, but wait for a couple minutes. But welcome back to Arbor Upcycle. Today we're doing our kiln. We're going to explain a little bit about how we built it, how we use it, just general questions and answers on how we're kiln drying our wood. And then, any questions you guys have for us in the process, we'd be happy to answer for you. So, maybe just give a couple minutes for some people to tune in before we start diving into it. And what can we talk about until then?
Calvin.
Calvin, hey bud. This is Calvin. He doesn't drive much good, but he eats, so. Huh? Well, I don't know. I guess we can, revisit some stuff too. So,
Yeah.
in case somebody tunes in a little later.
There's 10 people, so I think we're good.
Okay. Yeah. So, about a little less than 2 years ago, all that was in here at the time was
Sounds good with the mic.
the mill, the thin curve bandsaw mill, and the wraps. There's some stuff on it. Essentially we have to come up with a solution to dry our wood, whether that was outsource it or, find a way to do it here. So, essentially did a bunch of research for a while, figured out how to build a kiln and build this one. So, what we're using here is a Nile. If I'm not correct, it's a Nile L22. So it's fairly small scale kiln. Nile's a company that's pretty much like they're one of the premier manufacturers of wood drying kiln. So we went with them. So I basically bought the kiln, which is, I guess a lot of people think that a kiln is like maybe a ceramic kiln where it gets super hot. But this is not at all. It's not an oven. It's a dehumidifier. So the highest that the temperature will get is maybe 120 at the very end. It's essentially just a big dehumidifier. So this sucks the moisture out of the wood. So we went with the Nile L22 for our actual kiln system, and then we have to figure out how we're going to build the environment which it's in. So is it an enclosed room? Is it, a warehouse space? Well, what we figured is for us to be able to keep it inside the showroom, we needed to have something that was smaller and compact, and ideally something that we can move in. So we ended up going with a container. I got really lucky trying to find this one. This is actually what we call a sidewinder. So you can see right here, the entire side, long side opens up, where normally in the container you just have the two ends. So we have to have like a rail system where everything would come out. It'd be really difficult to, manage our inventory in here.
Hey, Clint, real quick. Someone said, what type of wood species do we work with?
Every kind. I mean, basically, no pine. We don't really mess with pine, except we have one Monterey pine here. Mostly hardwoods, mostly, a lot of cypress for the softer stuff, redwood. But pretty much, we don't really have stuff. We kind of work with everything. So as long as it's something that's beautiful, it's something that we can make something out of, or if we think it's going to be good, we'll use it. So I think right now we have like 36 or 37 species in the shop. So kind of a little bit of everything. And then just getting back to the kiln. So we got the sidewinder container. We built the container to be essentially a kiln. So this is this is a truss here, right here, with the fans in it. This is our baffle, which is just marine canvas. All the wood is essentially stored from this side of the fans forward. And what it does is the kiln and all of the actual hardware for the kiln is in the back. So you have a wet bulb and a dry bulb, which is telling you like the environment inside, which then changes all the parameters on the system. to, you know, exhaust fan, pull the compressor, turn on the compressor to pull the water out. So essentially, you know, we have it up here, the air blows this way, it comes, hits the wall, goes down, and then the reason we have everything stickered like this is because the air then travels through here, through the back, and then continually goes like this, the water being drawn out on the other side. We also make sure that we're always sealing the end grain, because all the moisture goes in and out of the end grain. So we want it to come in and out of the long grain up here. And by that, by pushing the air over here, that's how we achieve that. So that's kind of the basic setup of the kiln.
Someone asked, did you build this or have someone build it for you?
I built this. So
how long did it take you to build it?
I mean, from all the beginning to like researching, ordering, to finally have a working kiln, like 3 months. Actual time of building the kiln, probably about 2 weeks.
Did you have plans for this? Or did you just make it from scratch pretty much?
You just figure it out. Research, figure it out. You know what I mean? I'm sure you can have somebody come and build it for you, but
that question
like stuff like that.
question was from Mike.
Yeah, so I would say, if you can, do it yourself. Even in the end, probably to build this is quite expensive. You know what I mean? To have somebody come out and build it for you probably would have been twice the price. So, I would suggest, if you can do it yourself, do it yourself. If you don't have the time, then that makes sense to get somebody else to do it. But, you can go online, you can figure everything out on your own now. So, there shouldn't be any reason why you couldn't do it yourself if you wanted to. If you ever have questions, it's a high hourly rate for consultation, but you can give us a call. I'll tell you what I know. So,
Lewis, real quick too, said how much board footage can we fit in the kiln?
So I've gotten up to almost 2,000 board feet. But what I realized is I get a better result in the end when I do about 1,000 board feet. So I'm doing half as much, but I'm getting actually more than twice as fast a turn. So as you notice here, what I'm doing now is, at the beginning, I was like, okay, I'm going to stack this to one species, get that dry, so that way I know everything in here, it's all milled at the same thickness, it's all the same species, it's going to dry about the same. But what I realized at the end is that that's just really doesn't make much sense, because I need an inventory. I need multiple species to have a really good inventory, so if you come in, I don't have one thing to offer you, I have a bunch of things to offer you. So what I started doing is I started mixing species, and even to the point now where I'm mixing formats. So, right here we have this big, beautiful London plane. This is like 13 feet long, 3 feet wide. Almost everything I'm milling right now is at 13 quarter, which in quarter scale is 3 1/4 inches. So the thickness is primarily mostly the same, minus like if we have a small, this is ficus. We mill this at, Reggie, what'd you mill this at? 8 quarter? No, 6 quarter?
8 to 6 1/4.
Yeah. So this is all 6 quarter to 8 quarter here because it's a little smaller, we don't really need big, thick slabs. But in general, everything's milled at 13 quarters. So, this is, London Plain. This is, Bay Laurel. We got some more Bay Laurel down here. This is actually, eucalyptus. No, this is elm.
Elm, that's elm.
This is an elm. This is American elm from Golden Gate Park tennis courts. These are little rounds. We just throw in here little rounds. They'll dry real fast like this. And then you come over here. We have some of our turning blocks for our wood turners and our lathe enthusiasts. More rounds here. This is a willow burl. Now over here is pretty much all burl. This is second growth redwood burl from the slide on 84 down in Santa Cruz a couple years back. Same here, second growth. More willow. So we're just kind of mixing it up now, making sure that we have a pretty broad inventory every time we put it in the kiln. And then what we're doing is we're just managing it. So every week I have Reggie open it up, takes a look, sees what's what. You know, make sure certain things are dry. If they're dry, we pull them, and then we put something else in its place. So we kind of, at this point, instead of running like a single run on a kiln, it's just continuously running, and we're just kind of putting things in and out as we need, you know? So
we have a few questions.
Sure.
I think the first one is from Justin. Thoughts on a solar kiln versus this style of build?
Well, this style of build is way faster. Solar kiln is just going to kind of expedite the air drying process. So really you have 3 levels. Like you would air dry something, it takes the longest, but it's the best way to go, it's the most stable, right? Then you would have a solar kiln, which is essentially just like expediting the natural drying process. Then you would have a kiln like this, and then on top of that, you would have a vacuum kiln. And then the vacuum kiln is like you're drying like 2,000 board feet in like 4 weeks without a single check and a single crack and like super green. But you know, those are extremely expensive. So I would say solar kilns are, I tell a lot of like hobby woodworkers or woodworkers that, you know, might not have a kiln themselves, that you just somewhere outside, you could build a solar kiln. You know, they're great. They're like super easy. It'll actually probably, you know, double the time or cut the time in half to dry something as opposed to air drying it. So yeah, solar kilns are always a really good idea.
He's also wondering about the cost of running this.
So I broke this down. And really, it's really not expensive. I mean, the build is expensive, the kiln is expensive, the container is expensive, the labor to do it is expensive, but the actual running of it, I mean, this thing draws power in peak time, probably $8 a day. $6 a day in off peak. So,
great.
Not too bad.
Mike says, what is your appropriate turnaround time for drying? I understand thickness is taken into account as well.
Yeah, so you can usually account for drying in natural drying is like 1 year per inch. So if you have something that's 3 inches thick, you basically estimate about 3 years for a hardwood. Now things are going to change, like you know, walnut, oak, stuff like that. That's like a 0.65 on the Jenga scale, which is essentially density, specific gravity. You know, it's going to dry faster than a eucalyptus, which is like 1.07 on the Jenga scale, as opposed to a cypress or redwood, which is like 0.35, 0.4. They're going to dry really fast. So everything dries a little bit differently. But in here, if I was to put in like a group 3 hardwood, pretty green, right? You know, 60%, 55, 60%. In about 6 weeks, I can get it down to 12% moisture content. If everything's running right and everything's running good, you know?
Perfect. That's it for the questions.
Okay. Yeah, so what were we talking about? So yeah, so we can kind of show you, Rich, you got the moisture meter?
Yep.
So why don't you pull up the redwood, coast redwood? So this is some redwood, this is some coast redwood burl. There's a nice piece on the top here. You can see it. I mean, I can almost, oh my God, look at the curly in that thing. See that? Like the shimmer?
Oh, wow.
It's insane. So, yeah, so 13.6, 21, 9, 22, 13. So as you get to the outside, you can see it's more low. And then when you get to the center, it's a lot more dry. But again, let's grab that, Reggie. You can see there's no grain on that side, right? Except for right there. So it's only drying out of this side. So if we take a piece that's dry, that's milled on both sides, we might actually get a lower moisture content because it has more place for the water to come out. So 14, 19, 14, 8, 12. Now we'll flip to the other side. 16, 16, 17, 18. So yeah, perfect. This stuff's got about probably another week and it's good to go. This stuff's been in here for what, Reg?
About probably 4 weeks.
About 4 weeks?
Yeah.
And this stuff was super green. So that's why it's taken, you know, the full 4 to 6 weeks to get that dry. If I put something in here around like 25-30%, man, it'll be dry in like a week, 2 weeks.
Lewis is wondering what your dehumidifier system, what is your dehumidifier system you're running?
It's a Nile L22. Here, come over here, I can show you that. So this is Nile. It's like, this is the logo, so you can check it out. We'll go check out the actual control panel over here. But yeah, it's a Nile Systems. Oh, an L200, sorry, not an L22, an L200.
I don't know if they...
So that's actually the L200M, and it's not on right now, but essentially this is our control panel here. And this is where we control everything. You know, this is basically like drying schedules, like, you know, depending on group, you know, I mean, these are just rough kind of specs for you to run it at, but this is kind of, we basically run it somewhat off of this system here. And then all of our control panels is telling me, you know, 21% moisture content on probe 1, 49 on 2, 8 on 3. Hey, Reggie. 67 on 4. This is my total moisture content average there. We're getting error reads because the kiln's open and we have a bunch of stuff turned off, but essentially, yeah, L200M, that's the system we're running right now.
Sweet.
Hey, Reggie, what's number 3? Pro 3? Because that's reading 8% right now.
Oh, that's the redwood burl.
Okay. Calvin, there's not enough room for you back here, buddy.
Lewis says awesome setup and asked what the total build cost is. Lewis, we talked about it earlier in the live video. So when we post it live, you can just go back and look at that part of it.
Well, I mean, if you want to know how much it costs, it's about
That's true. You can tell it again.
$36,000. I mean, you got to take to the kiln. The kiln was probably about, I think about 12,000. The Cater 7. The electrical to run it was pretty expensive because it's all 3-phase. You know, it was actually a lot of work to run the electrical to this thing. So in the end, it was about $36,000 roughly.
Actually, that was a good question. I guess we didn't get to the actual number, so perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the kiln. You know, another thing we're doing just is to make sure it's that we're always letting everything kind of acclimate first a little bit. So we don't want to take something off the mill and put it in there. We want to mill something, let it sit outside for 4 to 6 weeks, even up to 12 weeks, and then put it in the kiln. Number one, the air drying lot will allow it to get the bulk, or at least start the bulk of the moisture releasing from the wood. And then once that's happening, you put it in the kiln and it goes quick. But to put something in super green, it's going to check and crack a lot easier. You know, so you want to give it some time before you put it in there. Then when we pull it out, I always let it sit for at least 3 to 4 weeks before I even touch it. And then at that point, even when you take a big slab out of the kiln, and it could have been out for 6 months or a year, right? What you want to do is when you start working that slab, you want to take your time. So the first cut you make into it, you want to make that cut, and then you're going to let it sit for like a week. Or you're going to surface it, you're going to let it sit for a week. Because all of this tension that's in these massive slabs, or even smaller ones for that matter, something over here is being held because of this tension in the wood over here. If you cut that away, that wood will move, right? So you want to give it like a week to move, and then when you work it again, you know that movement's not going to happen again. So you would work it again, let it sit for a little again, move again, and then once you get to a certain point, and the stuff's broken down a little bit smaller, or get it to the size you want it, and then let it sit, it's not going to move really anymore. So that's what we're kind of doing. You know, the kiln, there's always a good 3 to 4 weeks before it goes in the kiln and after it comes out of the kiln before we touch it.
Have you gone over the construction of it yet? Oh, David is wondering.
I mean, To be honest, it's really simple. So we, you know, the first thing we did before we did anything is we hung this, what's called this truss here. And we put the fans in, and this is just built out of 2x4, and then it's just held up to the container with lag bolts, right? Boop, 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 all the way across. And then from there, we put the kiln in where you need it in the back here. I don't know if you can see this, Jody, like kind of.
Oh yeah.
The kiln's back there.
I don't know if you guys can see that, but.
I don't think it's in focus.
Yeah.
Anyway, the kiln's back there. So we installed the kiln, and we installed the dry probe, the wet probe. We installed all of the parts that we needed to install back there. And then once that was done, I essentially took 1-inch thick 4x8 panels of insulation, hard packed insulation, and then essentially subfloor glued that to the walls. And then on top of that, then I rolled out this, you know, this thin, this roll insulation on top of that. So I essentially want to keep this its own environment in here. You know, we're in San Francisco, and it's always like 60 degrees, like on an average, right? We're at a big sheet metal shop. This place gets cold. Super cold. Like the floor, it's all concrete, it's all sheet metal. You know, in the middle of the night, you know, it's probably 40 degrees in here, 35, 40, 45 degrees in here. You know, like what happens when you go out on a hot day with a cold drink? It condensates, right? The biggest problem with a container is condensation. So if there is any single little pinhole gap where some condensation can get back into it, it's going to get on the back, it's going to condensate all on the inside, and all your insulation is going to fall off. And I know that because that happened. So one of the main things that they do in containers, when it's anything for transportation, shipping, all the containers have this like spray on the inside of them. It's like an anti-condensation spray, because that's actually the #1 problem with shipping, and that ruins goods. It ruins food, clothing, ruins everything. You know, moisture ruins everything. So the biggest thing you want to do if you were to end up going this route is so much diligence in putting the insulation on. Now, if I was to do this over again, and I was going to do it differently, I would actually I would fur up all framing and wood all the way around the kiln, and then I would screw into that, as opposed to just sticking it on the wall with subfloor glue. But again, that would have been like another 3 or 4 days of labor just to do that. So it works good right now in the way it is, and we have to do little patches on the insulation here and there, but you know, it's just kind of part of the game. You know?
Mike is wondering, is there a reason you decided to go this route rather than a vacuum kiln?
Price. I mean, right off the bat, you're starting a company, you can spend $100 grand, you can spend 30. So, you know, I mean, I'd love to have an eye dry, but you know, at this point right now, this works, and you know, it's just a cost issue. So, but yeah, the vacuum kilns are definitely the apex of wood drying. I mean, that's, you know, it pretty much takes all the variables out of your hands. You know, so I mean, I've definitely ruined some wood in here. Starting, you know, it's an art form. You know, there's guys that all they do in their life is dry wood. It's like a whole science to it. So, trying to figure things out. You know, sometimes you got to learn the hard way. I mean, right here you can see. This is a perfect example of what happens when it goes bad in the kiln. And this is the time when I said all the insulation came off. I was working here by myself for the first good year and a half. So there were times when maybe I didn't open the kiln for a week or a week and a half because I had so much other stuff going on. It was just kind of rolling. I didn't see any problems with it. So I realized one time there's a bunch of water coming out the front, and I was like, what's going on? Opened it up, and all the insulation on this side was falling off the doors, the ceiling, everything, which started causing condensation. The kiln wasn't running right. It wasn't taking the water out. It was just basically turning it into an oven in there. And then this is what you have. This is called cellular collapse. So you can see all of these big craters and how the wood's not straight at all. That's what happens when you screw up. So, discounted elm.
For sale.
For sale. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, if there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
That's it, pretty much.
I mean, you guys can always feel free to leave questions in the comments below, even, you know, long after, and, you know, tomorrow, later today, a week from now, 2 weeks from now, and, you know, we'll answer the questions as they come in, you know, so.
And then we do have a sale for people watching live.
Oh yeah, so anybody watching live, if the first 3 people to mention this live event, if they come in, will get a sale discounted price on material. So, come on down.
All right.
Everybody good?
Thanks, everyone.
Adios, have a good one.